All right. All right, everybody. Welcome. It is March 9th. Welcome to the Tinderbox Meetup. We don't have Mr. Anderson or Mr. Bernstein today, so I will run the show as best I can. I'm glad you're all here. Typical Tinderbox Meetup format for those that may have not are new to this process. We're here to talk about tools for thought, the tool of Tinderbox, knowledge management. We typically go around the room. We have new people invite themselves if they're so inclined to tell us what's going on. Let's let Mr. Bernstein introduce us real quick. So, Mark, I was just kicking things off, but if you want to, let's get Mark get off of mute, and he can kick us off formally. Mark, you're still on mute. All right, Mr. Still on mute. I can't hear you. Or can other people hear
Too
him?
many buttons.
Me? There you go.
Okay, here we are, March 9th, and it's Tinderbox Meetup with Michael Becker. I'm Mark Bernstein. Next week on Sunday, we have Beck Tench, which we're all looking forward to. Fantastic Tinderbox voice, and she'll be talking about prepping meetings with Tinderbox. But without further ado, here's Michael Becker.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Be sure if you can have time, show up for the Beck Tench talk. It's going to be absolutely wonderfully fantastic. All right. So as we were talking about in the preamble, typical meetup is if we have a theme, we jump right into that theme. We have new people introduce themselves and talk about why they're here and what they're doing with Tinderbox. We will have started a new practice where we kick off the meetings with a 10-minute in Tinderbox review. If someone has something to talk about for that, thought I'd share and talk about some ideas around inheritance today. So that could be fun, and we'll kind of dig into that. It might be, I'll try to keep it to 10 minutes, but I didn't, I didn't spend the 2 hours to make it, it's that famous Mark Twain quote. I apologize for the length of this letter because I didn't have time to write it. So we'll see if I can keep my thoughts on inheritance within 10 minutes. And then we, just have a general conversation about what people are needing and doing with the tool today. Now, we don't have a formal agenda today, so I thought we'd talk about inheritance. I ran through a interesting discussion yesterday with one of our Tinderbox members on how I'm teaching with Tinderbox, and I thought I could share, if anybody's interested, a rubric methodology that I've put together for grading assignments, so we could go through that. That could be interesting. But before we dig into that, let's go around the room. So haven't seen Phil in a long time, and again, Luca is new. So Luca, if you want to come off mute or share your video and introduce yourselves to us, that would be awesome. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to lurk. And then Phil, haven't seen you in ages too, so maybe you can tell us why you're showing up today and what you're interested in talking about today.
Should I go now?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I've owned Tinderbox for quite a few years. I think Jack Beatty was the one who got me interested in it, as he gets me interested in a lot of things. And I also follow what Dave Rogers is doing and has done with it. But I think the thing that really tipped the scales for me, I've never gone it full in on Tinderbox. But I think the thing that really got me was last year when I heard Beck Tench talking about slow software and thinking about what you're trying to do, and not just going with the flavor of the month tool for thought. And Tinderbox, I just enjoy trying stuff out in it. And I really enjoy this community and the forum. So I think I'm going to be here more often than not.
Awesome. And are you working on a particular project or anything, or have any immediate questions that we could put on the agenda for today?
The thing that I'm starting now that I think is the most obvious use case for Tinderbox for me is to put all of the life history that I can remember, because in Tinderbox you can put things in a year if you don't know the particular date, or if you do know a particular date, you can put a start date on it and end up with a nice timeline. And some of those things I'm going to have a lot of details on, and some I'm just going to remember, like, I was here with this person, or this is when we moved here or there. So that's the one thing that that I'm working on just in the background as I pick up new stuff.
No, I think that's really cool. And the other thing, to take that a step forward, Tinderbox I've been finding recently is a wonderful tool for writing your resume. Right.
Wow.
So you can apply, you can take templates. And so I'm working on a resume building template for within Tinderbox. And then you can pick and choose which elements of your resume and your history that you want to have go into your CV. And because I teach a lot, I've given over 1,500, maybe even 2,000 talks in the last 20 years.
Right.
And I'm now in the process of aggregating, accumulating all of those in Tinderbox, in that concept of that history. And then sometimes in the CV, I'll put all of them in, and sometimes I'll put none of them in. And I'm able to kind of manage all of that in Tinderbox. So that's one of the projects I'm working on.
Well, I'm going to try that. That sounds awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. Cool. And anybody else want to chime in or talk? If not, why don't we jump into our 10 minutes in Tinderbox? Let me put my timer on. So anyone have a URL or two? I love, that concept of slow software. I agree, Mark Bernstein. Bill, do you remember when Beck talked about that?
It was on,
and
on Jorge's podcast.
Could you find us a link on that?
Yep, I sure will.
Yeah, Jorge's awesome too. His duly noted book is amazing. Maybe we could throw the duly noted book in the chat too. Let me get my timer up. 10 minutes. Okay. So I'm going to set my timer to 10 minutes, and I'm going to see if I can do this butchered concept of inheritance. And then we'll jump into the rest of our dialogue and discussion. All right. So here I have a Tinderbox file. Whoops, you don't need to see that. All right. Everyone see my screen? We're good. All right. So, okay, here, good. So what I wanted to do first is to talk about some general concepts of this idea of Tinderbox, and then set us into this idea of inheritance. Inheritance is an incredibly important concept and foundational element in understanding to get effective use out of Tinderbox. And I'll just show you a couple of examples. First and foremost, before we even talk about inheritance, we need to discuss this idea of the attribute. It's a piece of information that determines the properties of a field or a string of characters. And so, as we know in Tinderbox, we can have every note can have any and every attribute associated with it, whether or not it's displayed or not, and both for the system and or user generated attributes. And again, within Tinderbox, there's those two concepts of attributes. There's system attributes and user attributes. There are 14 types of data types within attributes: action code, booleans, and we're not going to go through all of that today. But I just kind of wanted to highlight that concept, that when we're talking about inheritance, we're talking about this idea of attributes. The other thing to think about is, every attribute then by definition has a default value. And that default value is either generated by the system, it's generated by your computer, or it's generated by you. And again, we're not going to necessarily go into how to set all of those and do that today, but it's just understanding that default value. And that default value can then be inherited. It's either defining the term inheritance, a quality or characteristic or predisposition derived generically from one's parents or ancestors. So in other words, I'm inheriting a value from my parents or ancestors or people within the systems. And so where are those values coming from? And I'm very judiciously stealing information from the ATB ref and Mark Anderson's work when showing you this. So where are these default values coming from that we're inheriting within our Tinderbox file? They are coming from, let me take a note here real quick. Of course. They are coming from the system operating system. They're coming from the Tinderbox application built-in files. They're coming from configuration files that may be in Tinderbox. They're coming from the default settings within your own personal Tinderbox file. They're coming in with the document attribute defaults with prototypes that you set, and then the local values of a particular note. So this is, so the values that you'll be inheriting, up and down are coming from this concept. Now, in the previous note, we talked about this idea of parents or ancestors, and this is important for the concept of inheritance. So if I'm down here on a local note, my parent is the note that's right before me. So if I'm in this image we're looking right here, if I'm looking at this local note, my parent is the prototype, my grandparent is the next one up, and then my ancestors are are all of the notes that are coming before me within this chain. And so it's important to realize too, when we're talking about inheritance doesn't necessarily mean or doesn't have to necessarily mean hierarchy, because I can be inheriting a value from a prototype or from another note that is outside of the hierarchy of outline view, and that's an important concept to know. There's another important concept in the issue of inheritance that we'll often talk about is intrinsic values or intrinsic definition. And so the intrinsic idea of belonging naturally is essential. There are certain attributes within or values within Tinderbox that are not inherited or are not overwritten. And there's some nuances there that I can't say I fully understand or know myself, but some of them are like the text of a note, or some of them are the way different system attributes work, because Mark has put a lot of thought in to this where he wants us to give the most flexibility we can in using this tool. But there's also some things we generally know we don't want to do. Like, let's not try to overwrite our text or lose content that we have unless we really intentionally intend to do that with the actions that we're telling Tinderbox to take. Other aspects of this is the concept of, we talked about this, the inheritance for intrinsic or read-only values. Intrinsic or read-only attributes are not able to by inheritance. So and this often happens with like aliases and other elements as well. And again, as we talked about, and as I just said, inheritance is not based on the actual outline of your data. It's based on the relationship in this hierarchical outline view. It's based on the relationship that you have with a particular note. And then finally, this idea of inheritance and prototypes. Prototypes are a method of letting a single note specify the default value for the entire class of notes. But I don't necessarily, and a lot of the time when we think about this concept of inheritance, we're using it from the relationship we have with a prototype. But as noted before, inheritance can be driven from the default values of the computer operating system or the Tinderbox default document. And then there's a couple pro tips that I wanted to demonstrate with this idea of inheritance is how to reset an inheritance. So one is right mouse clicking on an attribute value, which I'll demonstrate to you in just a second. And the other one is using action code. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that really quick. So I'm going to pop into my note here and re-enabling me. Okay. Where is it? And let's go here. Examples. Color test. All right. So let's look at looking at managing inheritance. So I have a note here that's in red, and I'm just going to call that a note. I have a note over here that's a prototype. When you're in map view, you can't actually visually know that something is a prototype or not unless you put a flag on it or something of that nature. But if I look over here and I look at the note value, I can see that this note is a prototype. And then I have another note over here called a note using a prototype, and you'll see right down here, a prototype is listed. So this little flag here shows me that this note is associated with this note called a prototype. Now, what I want to be able to do is demonstrate inheritance. So let's start with the basic example. Let's say I have this note over here that is red, and I could manually go change its color if I wanted to say bright blue, or if I wanted to use a stamp, I could set its color to red. And now if I want to reset that inheritance, let's go ahead and color, as I noticed before. If I want to, and since this note has no prototype associated to it, if I mess around with it resetting to inheritance, I'm resetting the value of this note's inheritance to its default values. to the default Tinderbox note or system values. And as noted, there's two ways to reset that inheritance. I can either right mouse click on the attribute and say use inherited value, and then that takes me back to the default color of a note in Tinderbox. The other way to go about doing that, and I actually didn't put this in the slide, is if I go and go to here to system and type color. Right. Actually, I can do that with user attribute. I'll do that in a second. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do that is using action code. So if you can see here, I say $color equals, and then there's a null value here. So I'm not, and when you apply that type of method to a note, you'll see that is another methodology of resetting the value of a note to its default state. So that's how you do that. Similarly, if I'm up here with the prototype, so this note is working with the defaults of the system. This note here is because it's associated with that prototype, I can go ahead and let's say I change its color to red. You'll now see, apply that. Change its color to red. You now see that in the displayed attributes, this becomes bold. So that tells me visually that this is a local, this note has the local value of color, and it's broken from its prototype. If I want to reset that, again, I can right mouse click like that, and that resets the value. If I want to use the action code to do that, I can use the same methodology of action code. And so these basic steps work for anything and everything that you might want to do with Tinderbox. Show you some other values of how you can leverage this idea of inheritance too. Is and the way I use it quite often is with my media prototypes. So I have a methodology. Okay, my timer just went up, so I'm going to go 1 minute over, and I'll finish this concept. I have in my notes. My P media prototype has a default path to where I hold images in my file. And so you'll see here, I can have those images in that path. And if I display it, you'll see that image is being pulled from my hard drive and showing me how to do that. If I move that image on my hard drive, I can go ahead and just change the directory, and we'll call it like Military Connect. Right. And go like that. So so this methodology allows me to have defaults for like where I want my media paths and my media directories and the media widths that I want for images that I'm using in my file. But then when I'm actually manipulating a media file local, an individual media note locally, I can sit here and tweak the different parameters that I've generated for that note. And so I can still manage the paths of my images on my hard drive generically from the prototype, but yet still have the flexibility to manage them locally. So that kind of gives you this general idea of inheritance, that you can have these default values, have a class of notes or the system of class of notes, adopt values from the other notes, and then you can reset them locally or not. So hopefully that gave you a few little tips. I'm on about 2 minutes over on my 10 minutes of Tinderbox, but did that make sense to anybody? And do you guys have any questions about kind of what I just went through? And did you get any tips or new insights from that?
Can you run through it again at a higher speed, please?
I'm certainly could, but I won't. And I probably should slow down, but there's a lot to cover in 10 minutes. Thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, I had an aha moment, or my first real understanding of intrinsic attributes and the concept of inheritance when using an edict in a prototype. So you had to turn off inherited value so that the edict wasn't running in the prototype, and thereby never allowing the actual notes that are modeled from that prototype to run the edict because it had already run. So that right. was because it was intrinsic. You could turn it off, and it would show up in the notes that were created based on that prototype, and the edict would run. But if you didn't turn it off, it wouldn't run.
Right. Yeah, and again, this is a really powerful concept. So, for example, if I were to decide to move the main media path for my media files, or like I might make a choice down the road, say I want to have my hold my media files somewhere else on my hard drive, I've set it up in such a way that I can change it in one place, and then that would propagate everywhere, unless I've manually chosen to modify that for an individual node. So it really just depends on how you're going to handle it for yourself in your strategy. Anybody else have any other questions about that? Or Mr. Bernstein, would you throw any other addition to how to make that clear?
I keep trying to make it clear.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things you just got to play with, and then at some point the light bulb will go off and it will make total sense, and you'll never kind of look back from it.
A comment on my perpetual bugaboo on naming. Unfortunately, the human brain is so powerful. Language is, you can express hierarchies in language. Unfortunately, humans will apply the same terms in different contexts to mean something different. And it kind of gets lost in the black and white of software hierarchy.
Yeah.
And, wish I had an easy answer, but that's my political observation. It's I've come across in my profession of people continually asking, I want to have one name for this thing across the entire enterprise. Life doesn't work that well. If you want to use a unique number, that's fine. But then you have to have a system that groups, that clumps ice, water, steam, hail, fog, rime, etc., close to each other into a word cloud. But anyway.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so who else has any other topics that they want to share or talk about today? If not, I can give my grading rubric example if that's of interest to anybody, or we can dig into something else. Mr. Art, what are you working on nowadays?
Hi there. I'm actually traveling, so I'm connecting to you guys via my iPhone. It's terrible because I couldn't even see your example on the screen. But yeah, I'm traveling. I'm far away. For the first time in 4 years, I have gone away on sort of a vacation, but without my laptop. So no Tinderbox for another 2 weeks.
Wow. For 2 weeks? I don't know if I can handle that.
Yeah, total of 3 weeks actually, but yeah.
Wow, good for you. Good for you. All right, Mr. Rogers, your hand is up.
So just briefly, the concept of daily notes has been floating around within the PKM community for years, and people blogged about how their daily notes practices and so on. And it never resonated with me. I never really grokked it until when we did the Tinderbox for blogging meetup, and I'm still working on the blog test platform. I need to iron down the export templates, but I got distracted by my new project called Captain's Log, which is just a daily notes Tinderbox file with some automation built into it. So there's less manual intervention I have to do. And so I can record things that go on that I used to just sort of remember in my memory, and which is, I guess, growing full or more fallible. But it's already proving productive that the outline produces a new day's entries, and I can be in mail, and without leaving mail, I can send a new note to today's log entry for Tinderbox with a link to that mail message, so I can find it again when something reminds me about it, or I need to look for it again. I can look for it in that Tinderbox. And this is, apart from blogging, which I loved blogging because I loved outliners, and you could export HTML from Tinderbox as an outliner. Well, now I'm actually using Tinderbox and all of its automation features and making myself a product that I can actually that's actually useful to me in my personal life, apart from just posting all my nonsense on the web. So thumbs up.
All right, so you piqued my interest. What did you mean by setting from Mac Mail, like your daily captain's log? What was that
Right.
interaction?
Well,
you're doing
that was the AppleScript portion. So in the forum, there's a question I had about. It's been asked and answered several times, but I'm the most recent episode, creating a note automatically in Tinderbox, and I had a little issue, and it got resolved quickly by Mark Anderson, but because my structure of my daily log is a lot chronological order by days. I modeled it on a ship's log, and you can identify the path very straightforwardly, which is the key thing in AppleScript, and telling AppleScript where to put the note is being able to identify the pathway, and you can calculate all that. So when I'm in Mail, I go up to Fast Scripts and I pick a little AppleScript that says mail to Tinderbox or something like that, mail to log, I think is what it is. And it grabs the URL of the mail, and it gives me a little dialog where I can enter the title of the note, which is usually what's important about this email. And then it gives me another little dialog box that I can put in the text of the note, where I can amplify that or whatever. And then it creates the note, and the created is one of the key attributes, because that gives the time I did it, which is just an aid memoir type thing. And I never have to leave Mail. I can go on to the next email and go on to the next email, delete, delete, delete. But there it is in my log. Normally, I would just say, okay, I got to go back to that, and then forget about it for 3 days or 4 days. And, I'd maybe never get back to it. The part of the process now I need to nail down is the review, and the linking, but I'll get there. Right now, I'm just fascinated that I can make this work.
Well, now that you can actually share screen, which you have not been able to do for 18 months, is that something you can show us? Can you give us a quick little demo?
I'm glad you asked.
You're on mute.
I moved over to the MacBook just in case. So let me see what happens.
Yeah.
We know this all gets kind of weird. There's Captain's Log. I'm going to share that one. All right. So can you see that, Captain's Log?
We can.
Okay.
I love the name,
Yeah.
by the way. It's just wickedly good.
So this all began on March 5th, and let's see, can you see my menu bar? Do you see the little
yes, where it says map outline chat?
Yeah. Well, no, a menu bar up here. Do you see mail to log?
No. No.
Okay.
No,
So
it's not showing up.
You probably have to share your desktop then. You'd have to share your desktop then. You can't not just.
Okay. So is there can I just
So you stop sharing and then reshare and just show your desktop.
Okay, so share screen. So many choices here. So desktop one, I guess I share that. Okay, now I can go over.
There you go.
So, all right, so I'm in Mail, and I just did this as a test to make sure it works in here, because I'm running it on the iMac and now on the MacBook Pro, and that poses its own issues. But if I go up to my menu bar, I get the Zoom menu. But do you see that little menu drop down there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I use recent scripts, but there's mail to log, and it just gives me this little thing, and it's the currently selected mail is Catherine Hayho, and so I would type in Catherine in Florida. This other thing is the text.
Yeah, it's a demo.
And then go see her or something. Or done. Now I can go down and just do some more mail stuff, but it'll now created a duplicate, another note. So okay, so that's the first one on the test. This is the one I just did, and you click on the little globe
That
there.
is so cool.
So the stuff I always forget, I don't necessarily, or if I want to remember when I did it, let me get back to Tinderbox, like my medical stuff. So here's a Matanzas receipt that I just ordered some stuff from Matanzas Riverkeeper. I don't forget about these things anymore. I can find them quickly. So I'm very excited. This has made all the years that I've been paying for updates worthwhile, apart from my affection for this program. So I will stop.
And can you and can we see and we no don't stop sharing. Can we see your
Oh,
action code? You've been sharing it on the forum. Maybe
yeah.
and how is your menu thing working? Like show us how you're doing that. So when you clicked on
Oh,
the
up
three little
here.
dots.
So the
Yeah.
three little dots is, I think, bartender.
It's bartender. It's bartender, right?
Yeah,
Right.
bartender.
Which
Love
is a
that
great
program.
app.
Right. Because
I do too.
the notch is in there and it's not as big as my iMac. So, and then this is Fast Scripts, which is Daniel Jakut maintains this. I'll get a link and put that in the chat. So and you can assign a keyboard shortcut to, and on the iMac, I do have a keyboard shortcut assigned to this. So I don't even have to go to the menu.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a keyboard shortcut that'll run the script. As far as the various automations, so we have these prototypes, command one. So this is the basic, every year you start a new logbook or whatever. And so the edict on that is, make sure we're in this year. Don't create another month of January don't create January 2025 in 2024. So this is a guard statement up here to make sure that when you create each month, you're only creating one instance in a given year. So that happens once a year, but each month there is a prototype P month, and this is its code. It creates a new log page for every day. And within the day, this is what I sorted out with Mark Anderson this morning, is to use create to make the first note or make the first entry in the log. I'll call it the mid-watch entry. And this just creates it right now. It's out of sync here because it was created after I figured out how to fix it. So you see here, this is change colon. This is my convention now for maintaining a change log. I'll create an agent to gather all these change colon notes, and that'll be the chronological change log of captain's log. But I'm not there yet. I'm still, fleshing out the basic operation. But mid-watch will be come on, whenever the edict updates. This morning I got up and opened it and it hadn't created either one. But as soon as I opened it, it failed, and then I sorted it out. And maybe that's why I didn't create it at midnight. So I'll find out tomorrow morning what time they create these things. It creates these things, and the idea is there will be a run command in this one in the action that will do something either funny or useful, just to educate myself on how to use run commands in Tinderbox. Maybe just tell me uptime. Do run a terminal command and give me the uptime or whatever. But that's one thing I want it to do, is to do an automatic reach out to some external source of data and put it in the beginning of each day's logs. And I haven't decided what that is yet. It might be weather, it might be whatever, but that's what I want to do. But I'm here now. I'm at this point, and this is already incredibly useful to me. I mean, I've been doing it for just a couple days now, and we're going to take the auto train coming home, and so I can find my tickets really quickly. I mean, this is just awesome. So,
And can we see the Apple script that you're using, and then maybe the post from
sure, that's pretty straightforward. File, open, and let's see if I wrote it on the other one. So let's see, can I go to library from open? I didn't make that change. It was in downloads. Maybe it's still there. Where's downloads? Dave Rogers downloads. Nope. I moved it to library scripts. So, oh wait, I can do it up here. You can open it in script editor, I think, by holding the option key down, or is it the command key? Nail to log. If I hit option, what does it do? There it is. Ha ha! Amazing. I remembered that. But so this was the basic intro. Well, this is the basic intro. This is what gives me the two dialogues to make a brief title and a brief, commentary. And oddly enough, you can copy a whole bunch of text and paste it into that one line. You won't see it, but it'll be there. So if you want to copy a bunch of text from a web page, because the same script can work in any, well, it won't, this is confined for mail. I can modify it for Safari and make a separate one for Safari, but I haven't done that yet. So at any rate, we have the note title and we have the log text. And then we tell mail all this stuff to get the URI of the mail and then create the message URI. And then this is where the key stuff is this moment to the current date. This resolves the path to the note, and then tell, Tinderbox to set the container to find a note in it with the path. And we created the path and all this code down here. And then if it's not missing values, then we'll create the text and we'll set it to prototype P entry, and we'll set the value attribute of URL to. So yeah, this may be a different one. You can use URL or source URL, either attribute. There are many URL attributes in there, but this is working right now. And I think I've probably confused everybody.
No, I think it's awesome. Is there, and can you point you posted that on the forum, right?
Not the script yet, but yeah, well, the script is basically there in the forum, in the notes, in code quotes and stuff. So, but not as a file. I haven't uploaded it.
No, it doesn't need to be as a file, but can you point us to the forum post so we can?
Yeah, let's see. There's so much Zoom stuff on this screen, on this tiny little screen. Let's go over.
I think Phil has been patiently wanting to pounce on you with a question.
Okay, so I pinned it on my account on the last one. There it is right here. It's this guy, and this was this morning's latest interaction. Why my edict wouldn't create a new midwatch entry. It needs a path to make sure Tinderbox believes it's unique. You can't just do it in the bottom of the hierarchy. But it's a long thread up there right now. But I'll copy this link if I can make this bar go away, and I'll post this in the chat. Oh, go ahead, Phil.
Dave, I love seeing this in action. Do you tag things like all your medical entries or financial or whatever, or do you not worry about that and figure that you can get enough that you need about the history of a particular area by doing a search or something?
It's evolving, and I've considered that. I want to avoid premature formalization or whatever. So right now, I'm just trying to get the mechanics down. And as solutions come to mind, I'll try and implement them. The change log was the first one. Is that Jack Beatty convinced me of the utility of having a change log, so you can understand how the document is evolved and why you did things the way you did them. And there are some entries I need to make within those prototypes to kind of explain that. But yes, I was thinking about creating a tag for medical and creating a tag for travel, things that would make it easier for an agent to gather those things for projects that I do. For things that I have to do on a fairly regular basis. We travel a fair amount. I'm getting old, so I'm going to the doctor more often. So those types of things, I think, would be facilitated by having a tag and making it easier to find those. But search, of course, is great. The other part I'm looking forward to is this command 7, where this will begin populating in here as more and more entries get made. It will, let's see if I have to type something in here, I think, and it'll eventually populate this with some recommended notes that might be links. And then I have to look into the linking thing. But I'm excited about learning to do that because I've never linked notes in Tinderbox. I've never used that. I've always just linked to web HTML stuff. So this document doesn't get exported, doesn't get published. It's just my tool to kind of help me keep track of my life. And I want to explore the utility of linking in doing that. And because I've seen all of Michael's videos about how he uses it and how he derives utility from that. But right now, I'm just happy that I can quickly make an entry without having to leave email. And I'll transfer that to I'll create a new script for Safari to do the same thing in Safari. Right now, it's pretty straightforward. Just copy the URL. It stays on the clipboard, and then I can finish. So let's see, it's Command Option this. Yeah, this is a launch bars clipboard history. I used to use, is it still up here? No. I used to use Unclutter. I had Unclutter as a clipboard manager, and then I had a little got some feedback about clipboard utilities, and I decided I don't need as many as I think I need. So, all right, do we need this up here anymore? I feel like
really one comment I might have for you is: have you thought about adding like a Boolean for yourself, such that when checked, it would turn it red or strike through the name, so that way,
yeah,
what you've kind of triaged already.
Yeah, and so that's that's another thing about the log is I'm supposed to be able to capture ideas really quickly. And that's another script that I haven't necessarily implemented right now about what I want to do with the log and more use of color, more use of strike through. But the idea is not to use the log to recreate the functionality of the calendar or recreate the functionality of reminders. One idea is for events that I go to and haven't been entered in the log because they're already in the calendar, is you can attach an automator action, or you could. I haven't verified this is still true. And so I would have automator at the alert for the event. Automator would create a log entry that, we went to the theater this night, or we went to, whatever item was in the calendar. And that way I don't have to remember to put that in the log, but it's recorded in the chronological record of things that I think are worth recording in my life. But yeah, I have not, that's in my mind, but I'm not there yet. I'm still working my way around here.
That is really cool.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was just thinking that you could even basically set up tags and tags for your change log. So every time you made a change to your file, you would be able to say this is tagged as a change.
And that's why change : is supposed to be the prompt there. But I don't know if that's the ideal way to do it. That's just where I'm at right now. And so this will evolve over time. But I got, this was an opportunity to use these symbols. I love the symbols. I don't use them very much in the Marmot, but I like them in here because this looks like a series of volumes of years, and this is a year, and these are just pages for the month. And then each page is the individual day, and these are all individual deck log entries. So it's nostalgia for the Navy and stuff like that. So.
Well, it's totally cool because I am terrible at consistency of these things. So when it's programmatically put in, if the script is going to take care of the bad, I'm very happy.
Yeah. Yeah. The more overhead, infrastructure and input the computer can do, the more likely I'll use it.
Yeah, to that.
Awesome.
All right, I'll turn over the floor.
All right. But Phil, did you get your question answered?
I sure did. Yeah. I also realized like every bit of metadata that you add to a thing on the way in can potentially slow you down. Like it can pay off in the end, but if I worry about tagging things too much when I put them in a system, I'll just sometimes be overwhelmed and be like, oh, I'm not going to bother.
But the Tinderbox has an auto tagger, which I haven't studied yet, and that's in the back of my mind. The idea hasn't made it into the log yet to look into auto taggers as that functionality. There's also the word cloud thing that there may be some value to that, but I'm really excited about the suggested links once I start getting enough stuff in here for Tinderbox to decide what might be a suggested link. But the idea, this will also be like a journal for those long form kind of thoughts that I don't necessarily want to post on the Marmot. I can put them in here and have a record of when I thought of that. And watch that evolve over time if it does. So, all right, I will get out and let somebody.
By the way, just before you, one more thing, I kind of missed how you're setting up the structure of the months and the individual dates.
Yeah,
Quick.
Yeah, very straightforward. Share the desktop. Okay, so now we're back here and you can see this, right? So 2024, since it's already March, there's no January and February because I just created it. At the end of March 2024, this container will create April. And then April will create April Fool's Day, April 1st. And then April Fool's Day will create the mid-watch entry for April Fool's Day. So that I don't have to do any of that. The document Tinderbox will do all that infrastructure for me. I just have to come in and start making entries, which is
So
what
can you show the action code again? How is 2024 creating April again?
So that's a P year, okay, and that's an edict. So command 1 and edict, and there it is. This is basically based. What twigged me to this was the code I used for the blog test platform, because the blog is a chronological order. So you have to put this guard statement in here, because what I found on the blog test platform, I had started working on it last year. It created January 2024 in the 2023 container. So because it was just this, and then I realized, okay, I need to tell it not to. If the year this is created, this node is created in 2024, is the same as today's year, then create the month. But if it's not today's year, then we don't do anything. So
and so that edict is just constantly running, and then at some point on April 1st, all of a sudden April will show up.
Correct.
That is really cool.
Well, I think that's the most useful, I think. Well, I guess it's true. The calendars lend themselves to this. I mean, that's what's neat about it, is that the computer knows what the date is, and so it knows what to do if you tell it, and the edict tells it. And see, enable, that was the one. I had to turn this off because once it does it in the prototype, it won't do it again. So you turn this off, you can inherit, it'll inherit 2025 will inherit this same edict and create January, February, March, so on for 2025.
And are you doing something similar for month?
Yeah, month creates each day. So we don't want to, we only want to create today once. So we check to see if is this maybe wrong? I don't know. If this is March, if date today is March, yes. So if it's March, create today in this format. So if I didn't have this guard statement in here at the end of March, it would create, April.
Yeah.
So we put this guard statement in here, and and
for those that are questioning, when you're saying guard statement in Tinderbox language, that's called the conditional.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're saying if this, then that.
Right.
And
don't do that.
And for those that are looking at that, if you look at the syntax, it says if, and then you see a parentheses. So everything in between the parentheses is the if. So if this statement is true,
yeah,
and those are the parentheses, and then you have the little curly brackets, which is the end, which is the else.
So if it's true, then it performs this.
Then do that.
Then do this. It'll perform this. And if it's not true, it just skips it. It just does nothing.
Or if you wanted to, you could type in else and then another set of curly brackets and say, if it does this, else do that. And that would be
this was a trick this morning, is that I had the impression that I could just have a day, because this is the path 2024 March Saturday, create a new note called midwatch because it's in a unique path. But Tinderbox doesn't really trust you, so you have to tell it the path explicitly. So I was able to construct the path. Path is well, let's go up here. Let's go to March.
No, you had it. It was right there. We saw path.
Oh, well, it was blunt. Oh, there it is. Yeah. You can't see it. But yeah, so that should allow it to create the midwatch entry as the first entry under Sunday, March 10th, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the other nice thing about that is if you don't remember to hit shift return to create a child, my first entry, you have to hit tab. So it saves a keystroke. And over a lifetime, that's a lot of keystrokes. So assuming I live much longer.
And
I
again,
love this stuff.
can you explain the create my string? What is that doing for you?
So my string is the path, which is the attribute
I
that,
see. Yeah. Okay.
yep. So you have to have that path attribute in there, or it won't create because it'll
Okay.
create.
I see what you're doing. I'm sorry. I missed that first part. Got it.
Yep. And it just
Now,
creates a note called midwatch.
now this might be if I can interject, I think this is absolutely awesome. Now, a couple comments that come to mind when I see this is the my string is the default kind of placeholder. You've got my date, my day,
Just
so
a local variable in that.
Mark has created like these default local variables. What I found over time though is as you get more and more involved with action code, if you defaulted to your muscle memory of using my string, you could very easily start having different codes conflicting because they're all going to start trying to use my string.
Mhm.
Right? And that can get really confusing and quite messy for you.
Well, Mark, is Mark still online?
Hey, sir.
It's my string universal to the whole document, or is it local to the note that it's in?
My string is an attribute of the note.
So
Right,
my
but
string
the
action within.
again, what I found though is when especially when you're starting to use functions, and you start calling everything my string, you could start overwriting things. And then the other way you could make that a little bit more generic would be to start using variables. Right. So that way, you're not actually because the other reason for my string too is you're actually what you're actually doing is sticking. If you actually type in one of your notes, type in the word my string, you're sticking that path. So add my string to the value. You're sticking that my string
The value of the
you're
note,
sticking the value of that path into the attribute my string. So you're kind of unnecessarily putting a bunch of what I'll call data dust in your note that you don't necessarily need that value to be persistent forever.
So
Right?
what
Yeah.
you're leading up to is that if your value is only going to be accessed the one time,
Yeah,
it's
don't
perhaps
create.
better to do as a var.
Yeah, do it as a variable as opposed to hard code, as opposed to say storing it into an attribute value because you don't need that in the future.
I
That
kind of
makes sense.
disagree.
Okay.
The counter case is that my string is available. You aren't using it for anything else. And in a small document, you're saving a string of 15, 50 characters. It's cluttered, yes, but you can live with clutter in a small document. It's like margin notes. Um, it's it. I wouldn't assume that every Tinderbox document is going to be thousands and thousands of notes long. If it is thousands of notes long, then yes, it does pay to be particularly conscious of not leaving things lying around because it will be so hard to find them again.
Well, and specifically in this use case, it's just to create the containers that if as this document evolves, there are things I need to do with the data. It's mostly in the names of the notes where I would then create vars to reflect why that, the context for why that name is important in that function. Something like a var for midwatch to do something to all the midwatch entries, as opposed to this is just I want these month, year, and day and entry containers to do specific actions one time, and then they're done. But I take your point.
Yeah.
And I'm not there yet.
Yeah. The other advantage to using sandbox variables, sandbox attributes, rather than using local variables, temporary variables, is that they do persist. And so when things don't go according to plan, you can look at what the value of path was and confirm that it was in fact what you expected it to be, because often it will turn out that if you look at the intermediate variables, something will be wrong, and that localizes your search for where the problem lies.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Mark, I completely agree with you. And my files tend to have gotten into these many thousands of notes with, some of the files have hundreds of functions. And so that's where I'm kind of leaning towards some of that memory. But you're absolutely right. For the smaller files, it totally is spot on.
And I think, this may end up being thousands of notes. I mean, certainly, I think command one, this isn't very many notes right now. It's what, 98 notes.
But 10 notes a day.
Yeah.
You'll get there.
Right. So eventually you'll be, but the Marmot is thousands or Groundhog Day was thousands of notes. And, it's a very simple structure. So it's not necessarily the number of notes, I suppose, as the complexity of the structure and the action code that the functions and everything. So this is just a chronological record, and there may be some functions I create or agents I create to kind of facilitate grouping certain things.
This is really delightful. And do you have any edicts on the P day and P entry that are of particular important use?
P entry, I don't know. So
No.
what this may get, this is where Duke, the run command part will go in. I haven't quite figured out what I want it to do yet. I was hoping that there was a terminal command to tell me a knock knock joke, but there isn't. So I'm looking for something simple first in terminal to do a run, to learn how to use run command in terminal. And I haven't done that yet, but that's on the agenda for this week. And I'll appeal for help in the forum when I screw it up.
And what about your P day? Do you have an edict for that?
P day creates the midwatch, and that was the solution. The big trick there was to include the path so that Tinderbox was certain it was creating a unique note. So
nice.
So, all right, I will surrender the floor here. Stop share.
That was really fun. Thank you for that.
I'm very jazzed, obviously.
Okay. Anybody else have any other exciting topic question that they're working on? Who's got something else that they want to share? All right. If not, if you want, I can, if you guys are interested, I can show you a rubric grading strategy that I came up with leveraging some action code that I think has some interesting thought processes associated with it. I can happily share.
Oh, go for it.
Shall I go for that? All right. So I'll recreate it manually on the fly so I don't accidentally disclose student confidential information. So let me create a new Tinderbox file here. Let me find where'd you guys go? You're over there. Share the screen. Okay, it's the new Tinderbox file. I have so many screens open. It's just crazy. All right, and then we go find my test file. Okay. All right. So let me show you how this works. So if you think about it in terms of when you're doing an assignment or grading. So let's go ahead and I'll just kind of mock this up real quick. So let's say I've got a note here and I'll call it assignment. And we'll call it the assignment, we'll call it the QR code. So I'll have let's say I've got something I call it the QR code assignment. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and hit outline and we'll throw in some prototypes so we can do this really quick. And so just grab an event. So go here. I'll create a new prototype. I'll call it P folder. And I'll give it the little folder icon. So that's nice. All right. So let's say I've got a bunch of assignments that I have in this file I call P folder. And then what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to copy and paste some elements over so we can be building this up in real time. So, you know, I'm teaching a class and I'm trying to manage and grade my students in the process. And let me go over here and I'll grab some of your notes. And let's say these people are, for the sake of right now, my students. Dave Rogers, Steve Harsos. Let's say I've got 4 students here that I've pulled from my class roster. And the other file I want to have here is P assignment. So let's say we have an assignment that I want to have there. And that works. Let's make sure I've got the on ad. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull over the attributes that I have in this particular file, and we'll recreate those. So in my P folder, do it down here on the prototype because we just talked about inheritance, so we'll go ahead and do that. So in my P folder, I've got these various attributes, and we're going to now create those real quick because I'm pasting them in from another document. So my type is a set. I don't need that. These are booleans that I use for my templates. Assignments a string, points is a number. Course term is a string, and I don't need the rubric folder for this demo. So if I go like that, so now you'll see, and this is a great example of what we talked about earlier, this idea of inheritance, where I've created a folder called P prototype, and then as I've changed or modified the folder, the file that had that prototype associated with it immediately got all of those different values. And so then what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to, when I add new notes to this particular folder, this assignment that I'll be grading, I want the Tinderbox to automatically, manipulate that file. So I'm going to paste in some action code here that you'll show you that is what I have in the in the particular note. So when I'm going to paste this into the on ad in just a minute, but I'm going to show you what it looks like, or better yet, why don't we do it here? Do it here. We'll go to this notes. I never do it this way, so that's why. Here we go. Here, action. There you go. So there's the on ad, and by doing that way too, you can actually see that there's an attribute that I'm going to have to create in just a minute. But basically, I want to say when I'm adding a new note to this particular note, I want the name of the note to become, my assessment of that person, QR code, plus the text. I want it to get the prototype P assignment submission. I want it to get the assignment, the assignment name of this particular assignment to be getting that prototype. I want the assignment group to be turned to false. I want the points for this assignment to be inherited from the parent. I want the course term to be done from this particular note. And I want the full text, the full name to equal the text. And then I want to have the stamp. So let's kind of parse all of these different elements out, and you can see some of the automation that I'm doing here. And now that I'm looking at it this way, this is good because I'll be able to copy back over some of this. So when I'm adding, so what I'm going to do is I will explode this note in just a minute, and this will then add these 4 students to this particular folder, and then they'll be inheriting all of these this different information. Now, since I see I've got a stamp here that I wasn't showing you earlier, let me pull that in too. And so I've got a stamp I call P parse. Let me go find that parse name and I'll show you what that one's doing. I'm going to copy this over into this file. We'll add the hints folder in. So we can paste in the stamp. And here's the stamp that I'm talking about. Okay. And then I've got some values that I need to be generating here as well. So let me get another function here. So this is all about creating a file on the fly, which is kind of fun. So let me go create some of these values that we need to create while I'm doing this. I'll go new, and this is going to be short title. And I'll create another new one called first name. Another new one called last name. And another new one called, and I can just copy and paste it to like this. Okay, so we should have my new attributes here. Okay, those are good. So then if I click away, you'll now see that they're now purple, so they've all been generated. So that's working just fine. Let's go back to the action on that note. Get this attribute created. Boolean. All right. So we've got all the different elements for that particular file. So now what's going to happen is when and let's populate this primary notes values first. So I'll just copy from this class. So the assignment is set up QR code campaign. Tell me about it. The term is course term is Cal Poly Spring 2024. And the points for this particular assignment is 15 points. So, and then let's grab the submission prototype from over here. So I don't need to regenerate that one. The assignment submission, something like that. All right, and then we're going to have to generate some of these new values. We'll just go and pull it over so you can see it. So that's a set. That's a set. I don't necessarily use all of these all the time. Rubric points is a number. Grade is a number. Grade late penalty is a number. Grade final is a number. Grade percentage is a number. Reference is a number. It's update. Okay. And then let's make sure we take a look at this notes edicts to make sure everything is created. And then here's another strategy I can show you too. So we got enough time to do all this right. So is dormant is a Boolean, and it's by default true. Okay. And now I'll be able to break all of this up. Oh, and I've got my F status function I need to give you guys too. F status. This in. All right, and I'll share this sample file when we're done, so you guys will have all of that. And I've got date announcement that needs to be created. Okay. All right, so I think I've got most of the pieces now that need to do it. Let's see if this works. So let's say I'm going to go and I now want to go and grade grade this particular. There's two other pieces I need to add for this file before I forget. There is my rubric. Type, and that's going to need some stuff. Create a student ID as a string, student name. I'm just going to now go and create these. Student name is a string, is graded as a Boolean, is not applicable as a Boolean. And one other thing too is in my naming strategy for when I'm naming attributes, if I say is in anything, that to me means a Boolean. So that way, is it yes or no is kind of my strategy here. So that's a number, rubric range. That was a set. points offset is a number. Rubric learning outcome will be a set, but I'm not really using that right now. Okay, so I think we've got all the points, all the elements set up. And now this is going to work gloriously. Other than the fact that I want to set these default values. So let me do that real quick. We'll go here. And we'll go to our, oops, wrong file. We'll go to our rubric range. Is that right? Let me see, double check. Let me double check one thing. Yeah, I don't know why I called it rubric range, but it's good enough. So go to rubric range. Oops, come on. You can see how many, all right, let's go ahead and set some of these values. So I'm just going to copy this here. Default value is above average. Meets expectations. Needs work. Low expectations. Okay, so now that has been set up. And I've set this as a default. And okay, and if you look over here, now that I've set those defaults, you'll see that my defaults are now there. And so I set, so some of the ideas I have is I'm going to assume when I'm grading students that they've met expectations. And then I'll go and adjust those different elements. So now what we've done is I think I've got this file properly set up now. So if I go and now explode the note here with the students' names in it, and I'm just going to explode on paragraph marks, and I'm going to leave the text in the note, and I'll demonstrate and show you the mechanics of what's going to happen in just a minute. So by exploding that note, what it's done is it's gone line by line, and it said, okay, I'm going to create these 4 notes for you, and it will have created the exploded notes. And I didn't put the on add in. Okay, I've created the exploded notes element. So now if I move these notes out of here and up into this element, you'll see that they've all changed. And something didn't happen. Shoot. Let me see, why didn't that work? What's wrong with this on add? The assignment submission. Did I get the wrong prototype in there? No, that should have worked. Got the right prototype, but that's name didn't change. Is that because, let me see, this should have been, I see what's that. On add. Oh, I think it's because of this. I've got the or statement in here, so let me get that out of the way. So maybe let's do that. This. There you go. Okay, now it worked. So what was going wrong is I had the there's an or statement in this. You see right here where I've got this or equals. And so what this is saying is if the name already has a value, then skip this. But in this case, by default, the name will have a value called untitled. So I don't need that or statement there. So now I've fixed out that or. So now if I redo that exercise, watch what happens. I'll hit explode. That will then create this exploded note category. I now move these notes up into here, and you'll now instantly see Tinderbox has created for me the assignments that I'll now need to grade for each one of these students. Dave Rogers for the QR code assignment, Michael Becker, Steve Harth, and David Eddy. You'll also see that it is inherited the assignment name from the parent. It's inherited the type, that's an individual assignment, and that and the student's name. Now, for some reason, the stamp didn't get triggered. So let me see what's wrong with that. Yeah, let me fix that triggering of the stamp. Full name. Sorry, guys, should have set this up sooner, but you're searing Tinderbox. So Dave Rogers is there. Let me just do one at a time and see what's wrong. I need to look at this action code here and see why. So full name is going to equal text. And then, I see why. All right, the reason why I think it's failing is I've got a space right there. And so it's not recognizing that stamped parse name. So if I do this, it should have worked. Huh. All right, let me try this. Sorry, guys. What is going wrong with that? It's a full name, wasn't that? Oh, I know what's happening. Full name equals text. Because the name's in the text. I've been trying to debug this for a while, so that just solved that. Full name equals text, and then it should have been. Let me debug this real quick. Let me just fix this without full name. So, still not working. All right. All right, I'll fix that in a minute. Because what I'm trying to get is to do is have it automatically populate that name, and for some reason, it's just not. Let me explode it again because I've already nuked all my demo files here. Let's see if we just get that stamp. All right. I am failing in my demo. All right, well, let's assume that that part worked. And then I'll go and show you what I'm doing for my rubric testing, what I really wanted to show you. So for each file, go like this, paste. So what I'm doing here, I'm let me grade that. All right, so let's say I was grading Steve on this particular assignment. Oh, and I have one other stamp I need to bring over. Shoot. I should have thought this through before I had you guys watch me do all this. There's so many moving parts for what I got going on here. Where's that stamp? Thank you for bearing with me here. Rubric summary. Here we go. This is what I'm doing. This is the final piece I really wanted to show you here. So what I'm doing here is, let's say I'm going ahead and I'm grading Steve here, and I'm like, my overall comment is going to be for Steve is good, good job. And then I'll look at the next statement of the rubric, and for this particular assignment, this assignment is 15 points. If they've created the QR code assignment, they have the max point of 7.5 points. If there's, and if you look at the action code I have running on the rule I have running here, it says, if they've met expectations, and it's satisfactory, this should be, as I copied it over, so this should be meet expectations. Okay, so let me just fix that. This is where you. Okay, there we go. So if they meet and so you see what's happening here and what I've got doing for me. If they've met it, so if they've met my expectations for the QR code campaign assignment in general, they're going to get 85%, 0.85 of the max rubric value. And then that would automatically generate a grade percentage for them. And you'll see they're automatically getting I screw something up. Oh, I know why it's happening. All right. The reason why it's not updating is you see I've got my is dormant equals false element here. And so what's happening is this is failing in the note because so let me back up real quick. In my files, I have some of my Tinderbox files have over 10,000 notes. And some of my files have over 7,000 edicts running constantly. And some of those edicts have hundreds of lines of action code. So in order to optimize the use of my Tinderbox file and not grind it to a halt, I came up with this strategy saying is dormant equals false. And so rather than running multiple lines of action code on 10,000 notes over and over and over again, I came up with a strategy that every node in itself is dormant unless it's actually interacted with. And so then if you go to system attributes and you look at the on visit value, I have a default here. I say on visit is dormant equals false. So what I do is I use the on visit system attribute that triggers this action code, so that when I visit a note manually, it will trigger this set is dormant to false, which then will then tell Tinderbox to go, you're false, so run this code. Otherwise, is dormant is true. If I go back here and if you recall, on my is dormant note, I set default to true. So every note is dormant by default, and the action code will only run beyond the Boolean of true or false when I actually visit that note. So now that I've reset the is dormant value to false, you'll go back here and you'll now see it, it automatically is now calculated 85% of 7.5 because of it said is dormant is now false because I visited the note. Meet expectations equals this. So calculate the max rubric by 85%, and it's now giving me the points for that student. And so then I can go through and now quickly start grading the student against every aspect of the rubric. Did they create their marketing piece? Well, no. Let's say they didn't create the marketing piece. So I'll say this is missing. And then if I go ahead and go back, so therefore, because it's missing, it's now 0. And then if I go and, did they tell me about the experience? And let's say they told me about the experience and it was absolutely outstanding. And Mark Bernstein, while we're at it, this could actually be I can ask you something. Is there a way, so let's say I wanted to go ahead and, change the meets expectation, say it's above average. When I click it like this, the Tinderbox functionality, the way it works now is it will add above average to this. Whereas I just really want it to overwrite the value. Is there a way to set a setting so that it doesn't actually it's not additive to the list or set, but actually just overwrites it?
Well, it will overwrite a string, but a list can have multiple values, and
right.
So no, if you want a single value, you have to use a string. If you want a multiple values, you can use a list or a set.
Right, understood. And can a string have While we're at it, let's look at my string. Can it have default values?
Sure.
So let's express that could be really that could have solved a huge problem for me. So let me test this. Rubric string.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's just test that real quick just so we can see it. Yeah, that won't work for me because the default value
Hello.
is. Yeah, that's not going to work for me because when I set the default value, I want to be able to select between different
Oh,
options.
yeah, I can do that.
Okay. You're on should we put you on mute, Mark? Okay. So the one little kind of hiccup in my process is I have to like manually delete this one and then select the option I want. But let's say on this tell me about your experience, I'll say they were above average. And so when I do that, it's actually going to calculate that score value. Sorry, above average, it will calculate that score value. And then if they didn't have any of the screenshots, I would go ahead and hit missing, and I'd say, you did not include the screenshots. Okay, so essentially I can now go by creating this rubric for the students. I could say, overall, you did a good job. Your QR code campaign was complete. You met my expectations, so I'm not going to have a comment there. You're creating your marketing piece. Let's say that marketing piece was below expectations. It is okay, but I expected XYZ, right? So I can start giving. So as I'm grading the students, I can say, this, your experience explanation was fantastic. Okay, so I can basically incrementally kind of map out the comments that I'm giving the student. Then once I've kind of finished grading the student's work, I can go ahead and apply the stamp of the rubric summary. And what that automatically then does for me is it goes and collects all of the children notes. It summarizes all of the notes that I've given the student and then breaks them down for me so I can see what the breakdown was for myself. And it also automatically adds the rubric totals. It kind of counts up all of the points that the student got from below. And now I can go ahead and say, well, you know what? I'm going to now give them 11.
Did you already screen?
And you'll see that I now can see they've got 76% on this assignment. They got 11.5 for the grade. So going through this methodology has given me this, and let's go look at the rubric summary. So what the rubric summary is doing is it's saying, let's create two lists from the children notes. So if I select Steve Parth here, it's going to give me list 1 and give me list 2. And then it's going to go through and say, go collect all of the rubric points from the children and put that into the rubric points element. For each list, I want you to iterate through the list and grab the comments that I've given to those students and add that into the list. I then want you, for the next point, I want you to grab the short titles from each of those notes. And I want you to grab the point values and calculate those notes. And then I want you to stick that into the text. And then I want you to say is graded equals true. And so you notice then Steve actually turned green at that point as well. So the reason why I do this is now I can actually see all of the detail I did about grading that student. And when I go to grade them, all I need to do is copy this text here, paste that into the learning management system, and then I've got the points. And I've now been able to then have a very consistent way of grading my students and developing a rubric, and then using Tinderbox to, as Art was referring to earlier, and Dave, using Tinderbox to manage all of the automation for the things that I don't want to have to do. It's like the math and the calculations and grabbing each of the individual comments that I wanted to make for them. And so this process has saved me hours and hours and hours and hours of time as I've been refining it in terms of grading my students. It's also created a sense of consistency that I can now have in terms of every one of my students, and it will allow me to be able to go back classes ago and know exactly why I graded a student, what I was thinking at the time, I can just copy and paste that into the LMS system. It's just absolutely fantastic. And as you could see, there's, this is, to Dave's point earlier too, incremental formalization. I've been kind of refining this over time and we'll be continuing to refine it. But you got to see what it's like building a file like this from scratch in real time and the things that I've had to think through. So thoughts, I'll share this file so you guys can deconstruct it and leverage some of this code that I've got there. And you'll notice too, like and so if we went ahead and graded David Eddy, you'll notice this, let's say I'm going to check the, you'll notice that as soon as I'll just apply this one stamp right now. You'll notice as soon as I do that, these guys, he turned green. Well, that's happening down here. So when, different status set, oh, that's why it's not going. When different status elements are set, the color, I've got it saying, so like when something's graded, it turns green. When they're not graded or the value is missing, it stays red. And so that tells me that they've not done it. Yeah, Mr. Rogers.
So on this document you just created from scratch, what was I gathered tripping you up somewhat is the is dormant Boolean.
Right.
Where did that first appear? I mean, that's now is dormant because you have experience with files that are 10,000 notes long. You rely on is dormant all the time in whatever.
Yeah, now I rely on it all of the time. I use that as my default strategy because invariably my files quickly get to thousands of notes.
So this file for this particular course for this group of students, this would be one file, right? At a new.
I actually, I only primarily work with 5 Tinderbox files. And in one of my files, like in my teaching file, I have 6 different courses in it, and I've got 4 versions of my textbook all in one file. And so I teach so I tend to do everything in one, like I do all of my teaching in one Tinderbox file across all of the schools I teach. And another one of my projects, I've got 5 books I'm working on simultaneously in one Tinderbox file. That's why my files are getting to 10,000 plus notes.
Well, okay, but my feedback to that would be what's missing from this that would be in a class that would make this a larger document.
Well, I'll show you. Here's another example while we're at it. Let me find a section that I can show you. That would be not disclosing student information. Course. Okay, yeah, this is a great way to show it. So here's my larger file with tons and tons of notes in it. So one of the areas is I manage my syllabus in so let's just look at my syllabus for this particular class. So here are all of the elements that I'm doing for this particular course. And down here in the assignments area, here are all the assignments that the students are going to have to do for this particular course. And if I look at like the set up the text campaign assignment, here are the actual, and I don't need these anymore. Here are the actual steps that I want the student to take when fulfilling this assignment. And if I go preview it, you can actually see this is the assignment that they're going to have to do. And you'll notice in terms of the attributes, it's 15 points. These are the dates that are going to be due. It's an individual assignment. There's all of these elements. But because this is a syllabus, when I actually publish this as a Word document or push it up into the learning management system, I don't want all of this detail to be in the syllabus. But I don't want to be managing the nuances of these elements in anywhere else within the file. So look what I've done here. When I actually find this one to be really particularly cool. So if you look at this is probably my best way to show you is to do it this way. If you look at my templates, I've got a template called T grading. And what this template does is it goes through and calculates all of the points and builds a table for me. And I'll show you what that does in just a minute. And then I have a master template that I use for nearly everything. And if you look down here, I said, if the type of it, if a note's type is grading, I want you to apply the T grading template to that output. So
Oh,
now if I
so-
go back here, and let me show you. So you see how this note says type grading?
Mhm.
So, and whereas this note does not, its type is actually an individual assignment. So, and you'll notice that both these files are working off of the same template because of the way I've triggered it. So if I'm looking at this file, set up a text messaging campaign, and I preview it, it gives me all of the details and all of its children. But over here, because of the way I've set it up, now because the file's type grading, it's like, oh, you don't want to actually see the details of all of these sub notes. What you actually want is a summary of the individual assignments. So
Okay.
what I'm having Tinderbox do is going down and looking down at all of these children, adding up the points of every individual assignment and saying individual assignments have a total of 144 points. That's 32% of the grade. Here's a bulleted list of every one of these individual assignments. And so this is so Tinderbox is now allowing me to make summaries of the detailed notes of the notes that are below within the hierarchy.
So command one, and let's look at the document and see how many notes are in here.
This particular one, there are 11,000 notes, 612,000 words.
Right. And how many
30,000.
classes, how many classes does that represent?
Probably 5 classes and 4 versions of my textbook.
So 5 classes that you're currently teaching in this
Yeah.
semester.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the disadvantage to you to break that into 5 Tinderbox files that are, you have the basic
Yeah.
structure is identical.
So the big disadvantage is I'm constantly refining. So if I'm changing action code, if I'm changing my templates, I don't want to have to be copying and pasting all over the place.
I see.
I've talked about this a lot before. I also have tons of automation that automatically create things like terms. So when I'm off defining terminology for a class, right? These are think about this all as Zettelkasten. My resources list are notes that relate to every class. So I then don't necessarily want to be generating all of my terminology files and replicating that across all 5 different Tinderbox files. So if I have 5 classes, they're all drawing upon this common reservoir of definitions and terms that I use throughout all 5 of those classes. So that's why it's beneficial for me to have them all in one Tinderbox file. Likewise, the same thing for my textbooks.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand the context of why is dormant was so important.
Well, yeah, and that's why dormant is so important. So if you think about it, in this particular file, let me open up a different one. I've got another file that has 7,000 edicts because every note's got an edict and every note's got action code. And some of these files could be calling 7 or 8 different functions depending on what they're doing. And I don't need those running. I only need those running whenever I've actually manually touched that note or modified some of the values and triggered it. So rather than having it running all of those lines of code, it's only running, is this note dormant? If yes, run its code. If not, skip to the next one. And so it's just running 7,000 yes, no booleans versus all of the sub functions of those notes. And that's why it's important, right? There's really, there's no need to run all that, and it bogs down my computer. There's no need to have it running that much code. And then
Right. Well, I think that's a very, a very advanced sort of example, which obviously, it's good that facility is there, but
Yeah.
For us more
the average person, you'd never need it. I mean, at all. The other thing is because I run my 5 Tinderbox files, I have them constantly open. So it's not just this one file with 10,000 notes. I have 5 Tinderbox files with 10,000 notes. So it's actually 50,000 notes open simultaneously all the time. And they're all trying to run their code. And I found that that is dormant function. Tinderbox and the M2 Mac can easily run 50,000 booleans, yes, no booleans without blinking an eye. So this then allows me to have all 5 Tinderbox files open simultaneously, and then I can go back and forth between them and manage my different projects at the same time.
Well, you certainly humbled me in my my modest little captain's log.
I'll figure out when I post this file, I'll figure out what I broke in terms of trying to set up the automatic name parsing element. Because the other thing what that allows me to do too is it parses out the name, and then I'll have in some of my templates, it will say, hey, Steve, great job. And so it actually then allows me to insert personalization into the responses that I then copy and paste and give to the students. And it's all of that kind of automation that automatically does for me that, just makes it easier. To your point, every key, think about 30 students, 100 students every week, every keystroke, that's a lifetime. If I can get some of those keystrokes away, for every keystroke I don't have to do something is something I can do being of service to my students, as opposed to slave to the process.
That's the key point.
Yeah, that's the key point.
You need a new Macintosh. You need a new MacBook Pro.
I'm going for M3. I'm going to accidentally drop my laptop probably in about a month.
You're gonna get an Ultimate. Get you. We'll take options to get you an Ultimate Mac.
Yeah. So we went a little over, but hopefully this was of interest to you all, and you kind of got to see a little bit of the mad scientist stuff that I've been playing with. But I'll just want to leave you with this one last thing. I think this is a really crucial thing to think about when you're using Tinderbox, right? So if I look at my entire syllabus, right, this is my entire course syllabus with videos and some images or like my speakers, and all of this is being generated. And you notice none of the detail of the assignments are there because I don't want them. But you'll notice that Tinderbox is automatically generating this table for me and pointing and calculating how many points this class is. That's stuff that Tinderbox can do that I've not been able to find. And believe me, I've looked, not that I necessarily want to find another application, but just because I'm curious. I've yet to find any other application that even comes close to being able to do this. Nothing like this.
I have a rude question for Mr. Bernstein. Is there anything in the Windows world that even comes close to Tinderbox?
No, not to my knowledge.
And I would think you have a broad network that would be reporting on such details.
Yeah. And Mark, one last final question. So I did the test while you were on your call, and the string part's not going to work for me because where were we? Because that string creates, let me show you an example, rubric string. I created a rubric string example, and the problem is when I put in the defaults are actually a string. So I need the ability to have sets, but what I'd love to be able to do is rather than it overwriting.
Yeah, I think you want suggested values in a string.
I tried that. So if I go here to the rubric, rubric string. So, not default. Like that. So if I do that, hang on, let me update the note. Yes. That is exactly what I want. Oh my God, you're a genius. Awesome. You've just saved me another 3 nanoseconds that I want.
We already knew that, Michael.
What does suggested values do? That looked interesting for something.
So suggested values are great. So if I come in here and I'll just type in your name like Dave Rogers, like Dave Art, right? So if you like in this context, I know what my rubrics, I know what values I want to be able to select from. So if you go in onto an attribute and you type in suggested values, you can right mouse click here. And you'll, and I got to update the note again, sorry. you can see here are the suggested values for that attribute. And so I can just select one.
So if you don't select one, it's empty. Is that
It's
correct?
empty, or you have a default. So I could have my default is hello world. Right? So let's go ahead and create a new note. And we'll go ahead and type in the rubric string. Right? So the default value is hello world. But if I now want to change it, that's a suggested value. This is really, really powerful. I use this everywhere. I just didn't think about that string element, Mark. So you just saved me a ton of time.
It solves a problem that I was thinking about. So it's good.
Yeah. All right, all. We're about 15 minutes over. Totally unplanned session, but it sounds like we had fun today. So
Yes.
yeah, awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see ya. And Phil, hopefully we'll see you back soon.
Yeah, it's on I subscribe to the Google Calendar, so I'm always going to know about these now.
Awesome. Okay, see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.